Recently, Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, predicted that AI was going to eliminate 50% of entry level white collar jobs within 5 years. And that would raise unemployment to 10 to 20%. But there is some debate about what's actually going to happen and the true impact of this. And I think it could also generate massive opportunities. So, thankfully, to digest this, I'm talking to Sadie St. Lawrence. She's the founder and CEO of the Human Machine Collaboration Institute, a former member of the White House Data and AI Training Working Group, and the founder of Women in Data. So, hello, Sadie. Tell us a little bit about where you stand on some of these issues uh, with the workforce and AI.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Ray. And I'm so glad your camera came back on because we wanted to see you.
And it was
Uh,
right by on the intro, like the intro finished, and then the camera. I think what happened was it switched to a different source for some reason, and so I think that I'm not used to this particular software, so we're just getting started with the show. So I appreciate you being so kind.
you're back. That's all that matters. So yeah,
Yes,
I'm so
that's
happy
good.
that you brought up this article because you know it's something that came up in my feed quite often. It's something that individuals would be pinging me about and being like, "Is this true? Are 50% of jobs going to go away?" And to be honest with you, I don't know if I really believe this. And I think, in my personal opinion, I look at this somewhat as a big PR stunt. And the reason I say that is because there is so much noise in the AI space. Hence, I think probably having this show to talk about some of the things happening in the space on the weekly basis. And so breaking through that noise is really, really difficult, particularly when ChatGPT has dominated the market. I just shared a few weeks ago on HMCI's social media channel about where kind of users stand, and it's like ChatGPT has like 80% of the market from individual user bases, and then it's kind of split between Claude and Gemini and a couple others. And so part of me looks at things like this and goes, okay, is this just a big, bold claim, right? Is it a really good hook line to get
Mhm.
news articles talking about it, getting interviews, and really taking a contrary stance to things? And so I actually believe there's a large portion of that, of just saying 50% of people are going to go away. And the reason for that is because another paper recently came out about large language models having small labor market effects. And this paper was done, they did a whole scientific study on this and looked at employer data in Denmark. And what they found was that while individuals are having productivity gains, organizations as a whole are not seeing productivity gains from AI. And if anything, they estimated around 2% over the next couple of years. And so I really encourage people to go read this because I think it will give a better perspective on what's happening in the market. And I wouldn't say be concerned that 50% of jobs are going to go away, but I do think jobs are changing.
Yeah, that's definitely true, and I kind of agree with you. When I saw that article, I was thinking, "There's no way." Maybe he does know something I don't, but I just don't see that level of disruption. It's not really what we see in the true numbers today. And if you look at some of the other articles where you see like actual like huge growth in certain fields, maybe some pullback in other fields, I do think that there's some to the sort of idea that maybe this is some sort of, I'm not going to say it's as a pure stunt, but some sort of way of getting attention. And, who better to say that all these things are going away than the people that are inventing the solution?
Mhm.
So that kind of like made me think, well, maybe I should. Folks are always trying to sort of get in the news for, whenever they need to sort of, cause some PR, especially when they're releasing a new model, which they just did a few weeks ago. But there is some additional data in different places. So, for example, the we have the Microsoft Trends report. Actually, this is the report from Microsoft, and they talk about that 75% of knowledge workers are actually already using AI at work. And I think I've heard this before as well, that in the past, people were using AI, but not telling anybody that they were doing it at work. And how we're now having a transition into, the company's actually making an effort to bring AI to work. This particular article from Microsoft shows that 75% of knowledge workers are using AI at work, but 46% of them were adopting it in the past month. So, what do you think about what that does to the expectations from employers?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. In this report, I did read as well how a lot of them were kind of doing it in secret, and I think that's starting
Mhm,
to now not be done as much. I think everybody just accepts that you're using AI and it's okay. Uh, I think what that does is change some of the expectations from employers. What I'm starting to see is kind of a consolidation of roles. And I attribute this to similar to what we saw with like the content creator economy. So, people who create content are really doing 3 to 4 jobs at a time. In the past, used to have a copywriter and somebody who would write the creative for you. You'd have maybe a photographer or somebody doing, the videography, right? And then you'd also have
mhm,
like an editor. You'd have your model or your spokesperson. Those are like 5 different roles. Now you got it. One person is doing all of those jobs, right? And the tools got
mhm.
easier and it got cheaper to access some of these tools, but the roles got consolidated and it opened up new markets and opportunities. But, you know, sometimes when I'm creating content, I'm sure you feel the same. It feels like we're wearing 5 different hats, trying to get the video to play, trying to get this to go. And it's a lot of different roles to play. I think we're going to see something similar happen in the AI space. And what I attribute this to is going from being a musician in the orchestra to being the conductor. We're no longer
Mhm.
going to be the individual flute player or the violin player. That will be taken by AI. Will be doing the task. We'll be the one orchestrating it. And so I like to think of it as moving into an orchestrator role. And what we're
Mhm.
orchestrating is AI to be able to create.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that the way that I use AI, it's really as a resource. Say, like when I'm writing, you talked about editors. I used to work at a newspaper right next to all the editors, and they did a couple of things that were amazing to me. Number one, obviously, they cleared up all the writers' writing because it was full of like mistakes, grammatical and style mistakes, and they would clean all that up. Then they would also come up with like the headlines for everything. And so
Mm,
those are things that I really use AI for already. So it's like I have a team of editors and also a team of writers that help me polish things. I love, for example, when you use Canvas mode in ChatGPT, that you can actually spot, say, select a paragraph and ask
mhm,
it to clean up or maybe make it shorter. I was writing a letter to my boss earlier, and I know that when you write things, for bosses, they like things to be short. So I'm always going, okay,
yes.
take I write like what I think, and then I go, okay, ChatGPT, help me out. I need it to be as concise as possible, or they're not gonna read it. Like it needs to be a sentence. So hopefully my boss isn't watching too much. But yeah, it was great because it was really when I read it, when it was done with it, I'm like, this is exactly what I wanted to say. And every main point is just a sentence. And I could have never done it. I feel like I could have done it myself
Yes.
before. So that additional sort of, I don't know, skill that I don't have, or maybe that I'm not comfortable with. The same thing with the titles. Like I didn't know that none of the writers came up with their titles, that these team of editors, would actually craft the titles to make them, much more impactful. And that's another thing that I let ChatGPT, do for me. I let it come up with that. I get it to do my research. Again, things that I would never normally do, and it just
Mhm,
polishes my work up to a different level. And I think that that's what people are kind of finding with AI, that it makes you just appear to be at a different level of capability. And it's especially helpful for things that you maybe aren't as good at. English isn't my first language. So I think that we're seeing that, but we're also seeing something that is a little bit, I think, strange. And I think the report also highlights that 60% of the leaders feel that their organizations, they don't really have a clear AI implementation plan. So what do you think about employers themselves when they see, maybe they see that some people are like far above the rest and they're suspicious, like maybe, these people you are using AI, like but then why aren't the other people? And so that creates maybe an imbalance. And what should they be doing, the employers, to sort of articulate a coherent AI vision, and then kind of help everybody come to the table when it comes to AI?
Yeah, so a couple things on this. I think this is really why we see AI not impacting the organization as a whole as much. And what I recommend for individuals is get clear on what we mean by AI in the organization. And
Mm,
the way I break it down is it AI as a collaborator and assistant, and every, business user should be using AI and working with it and having it as a collaborator? Or are we actually looking to use AI to build new products and services ourselves, right? Are we looking to create something new and put it into the organization? And so first you have to get clear on what are you talking about with AI? Are you talking about as a collaborator, how most people in the Microsoft survey are using it? Or are you talking about new products and services? And I think on both sides, I see a lot of organizations missing a strategy. On the collaborator side, what needs to happen is not just turning a tool on like Copilot or Chat or Claude or any of those. You actually have to have a rollout plan for, okay, how are we going to notify the organization? Are we going to provide training and get really specific in terms of how individuals can use it? Because for some people, they're just going to pick it up and run with it. For others, they may need those prompts. And so one of the things that we did at HMCI was we did a whole analysis to say, for an organization, where can AI be used as collaborators and where can it not be? And what we did is we took all the job descriptions of the organization, we pulled out every single task from those job descriptions, and then we matched it where AI could be used and couldn't. So we had very tailored training, very tailored
mm.
recommendations in terms of implementation plan. Okay, that's on the collaborator side. On the AI strategy side, this is a whole other discussion. This is where is your data in a ready to use aspect comes into play, right? Do you have, a good data pipeline in place? Is the data accessible? What does your data governance model look like? This is really where we get into the meat of what's happening in data, because to build a new product or service with AI, you have to have your organizational data ready. And that's where I see a lot of companies struggling, is having their organizational data ready to be used, but also having the business know what data is available so that they can create products and services. So my recommendation for leaders is to start in either one of those two spots.
So I had this peculiar thing happen to me last week where an employee came to me because they knew that I know a little bit about AI. And they asked me, "Hey, my boss told me that we should do everything with AI. So, here's a thing that I want to do." And it happened to be like this massive PDF that they wanted to like have access to. And the more I looked at the problem, the more I realized that what they really needed was a knowledge base. AI
Mm.
can't really pull specific pages from a PDF and serve them to you and provide like search. So there was a little bit of a misalignment. Right now, a lot of sort of the managers are thinking, throw AI at the problem, but they don't know that AI can't really do anything yet. And that really kind of highlighted this problem that there isn't not only not an implementation plan, but perhaps something like a disconnect between what AI can actually do or what it should be trying to solve, because it's not yet everything. I think maybe there's a misconception about that, right?
Oh, 100%. I see this all the time. We saw it with the Duolingo CEO come out and say it, and then the Shopify of like, everyone needs to use AI. And again, it was another big headline news week. But
Hmm.
Well, it's great to have that leadership from the top saying, "Hey, learn new skills, progress." For most people, there's not a they need a lot more clarity. And so this is where I highly recommend getting really specific about how you're going to
Hmm.
use it, because throwing AI at every problem is not going to work. It's amazing, it can do incredible things. I mean, I almost think it can solve every problem, but it can't yet. And back to our original discussion, again, the reason why I don't think it's going to take 50% of jobs is because it's not this super magic tool that comes in and fixes all of your problems, but it is useful at some point. And so doing that detailed analysis to know how are we going to use it, where are we going to use it, and what is that best implementation strategy will save you so much in the long run.
I appreciated that person coming to me because obviously I think you need people who can understand what they actually need. And that was obviously a learning moment for everyone that, hey, it doesn't do everything. And sometimes maybe it's not the best tool for every job. It's pretty amazing. It can be super helpful, but it doesn't quite do everything yet. And I think we're not going to be there for quite a while. I mean, I think in terms of like how people talk about robots taking over, I'm like, I made a post a while back where I said anybody who thinks robots can do everything, they probably don't have like a robot, because you have to maintain them, you have to like clean
Yeah.
them, you have to charge them, they need repair. Like if you have a service contract for, a major appliance, you know that they break down and somebody needs to come every few years and all kinds of service and stuff. And I think that we're missing kind of all that, thinking about, hey, yeah, maybe like eventually they'll be able to fix themselves, but maybe right now would be a good time to learn to be a robot repair person, I guess.
Yeah.
But but there's definitely some places where it is having an impact. And yesterday, as a matter of fact, also I had another person who talked to me about her daughter and how she wanted, her daughter was planning to go into graphic design. And so I picked up this
Mm.
article from the Guardian, where they talked to individuals who actually already lost jobs to AIs, like graphic designers. And this is why I pulled this article. This lady reminded me, I actually went to school originally in journalism, but focusing on graphic design. And I worked for years as a graphic designer. And a lot of people in those fields are really scared. And this gentleman here, Jaden, literally got displaced because of, and here again, I don't necessarily think that it was AI itself, but it's the concept of management thinking that, AI can do everything. So why do we need so many designers? So
Mhm.
what should people be doing to sort of adapt against the encroachment? And how can we make sure that companies are aware that there's something to some jobs that we're still going to need, even I think in graphic design.
Yeah, so one of the things I would say is it's really hard to say, was it AI in particular that replaced someone or just
Mhm.
continual job changes? And so that's one of the things I encourage people just to keep in mind is that jobs are always changing and evolving, and companies' priorities are always changing and evolving. So, regardless of if it's AI or some other company wide priority, there's going to continue to be changes. And so, we have to continue to upskill, reskill, but most importantly, find new career paths and new interest areas. And so, what I tell individuals is, you know, don't always be thinking that you're going to have one career for life. I think it's estimated today that individuals will have, anywhere from 4 to 5 different careers. And what I mean by that is going from kind of like you did, it sounds like went from graphic design to journalism to doing tech, right? So I mean, those are
Right, right.
two very, very different things. You're already on it. Are you on your third life or fourth life, right?
Yeah,
I was
something
a
like that.
piano performance major. I
Wow.
did neuroscience. I worked in a
Right.
lab. It's a continual evolution. And so also be ready to pivot, not just
Mhm.
from like a education and skills standpoint, but from a whole career standpoint, because company priorities are continuing to evolve and continuing to change.
That's so true. And I think that when I read this article a little further, you can see that this gentleman actually said, I couldn't find work in graphic design, but I did get a job as a content creator. And so the fact that he actually started working with video, and then he moved on to that. So that's actually great. He actually did the sort of made the solution happen for him, or made the problem sort of show what the solution is. I think the biggest thing people can do right now is to just be adaptable, in the same way that you and I were adaptable and moved on to different things. I think that that's the number one skill. I don't think that jobs are going to completely go away. And I think that if you can be adaptable and I think also leveraging something that you're good at also with whatever you're doing. So for example, for me, I started out as a graphic designer, or I got a degree in journalism focusing on graphic design. But then, the internet happened and I said, I bet you they could use some like graphic designers that know how to code. So I learned a little bit of coding. That's actually how I got into LinkedIn Learning Linda at the time. I got myself a subscription. I watched a bunch of videos. I trained myself on how to be a web designer. And because I had a solid portfolio already, design portfolio, it was an easy kind of transition. In this case, this person learned a little bit, like he was already doing some videos, so he learned a little bit more about that, and he was able to transition. So you do need to be, I think, highly adaptable today. So what about what I was talking about before about company making some of these, and in this article, the same thing happened that some companies might be prematurely automating roles. Do you think there's going to be some sort of kickback, or maybe you're going to see some displacement at first, but some of those jobs might come back? I think that happens often, right?
Yeah, I think that some of those jobs come back, but they come back in a different form, right? So just like the article you shared, he went from graphic design to content creation. Well, a big part of content creation is graphic design in it. It's just evolved and added on additional layers. The other
Hmm.
side of things is being a full-time content creator, I don't believe existed 10, 15 years ago, right? It's a fairly new field. So that's the other advice to people is be on the lookout for what I would say is even careers that haven't been developed. And this is, I think, where following your passions, following your interests, and doing side projects or just, side work that interests you is really, really helpful. The way I like to look at it is I call it slash career. So I have my
Hmm.
full-time job slash 10 other things I do, right? Maybe being a LinkedIn learning instructor or other things, just because one, it helps keep me engaged, it helps keep me learning. But then I never know when my full-time job might fall off and I need to replace it with something that was in my slash career. And so for those looking to kind of future proof their work, not only is it that continual learning, but think about what maybe additional kind of slash careers do I want to have? And maybe it's not even a career right now, but more of a passion project. I mean, for me,
Hmm.
like creating and sharing content and teaching, those were all things that I did just for fun. It wasn't anything to get paid for. And soon it becomes more and more of my work and what I do. So just be open to the thing that hasn't been created yet.
Hmm.
And back to your point of adaptability, I know it can be scary to be like, how do I lean into something that doesn't even exist? It's like, well, you are the creator to make it happen.
Yeah, and look at the trends. This trend shows that AI job postings have grown by more than 448% over the last 7 years, while non-IT jobs have decreased by 9%. But that more to me, clearly, more than makes up for the decrease. And I think that you're going to need to sort of adopt that mentality of always retraining and thinking about what you could be doing or how could you level. That's what I always told people when you're trying to learn something that seems impossible, find something that you already know and leverage that, and add a little bit more learning to what you're already doing. That's how I taught myself web design and programming and all that stuff. I'm like, I can't possibly do all that. But you leverage what you know, you try to expand little by little. Doesn't have to be all at once, and then it's easier to make that transition. So I know you do so many things. How are you using AI in your daily life? Could be at work or in your personal life. I know you do a lot of social media, and maybe you can share some things that people might not even be aware that you can do with AI.
Yeah, so definitely a big user as an editor. So I just finished writing a book. It should hopefully be coming out this fall. I got the reviews and feedback. And so what I found for me writing a book that worked for me was actually using a mic and talking into the mic. So I wanted it to sound like me. I wanted it to sound like Sadie. And the best way for it to sound like Sadie is for me to talk it out. So I used a mic, recorded it, and then I would have AI go through it and kind of clean it up because voice to text still is not that great. So it cleaned it up on that side of things. So definitely editor is a big thing. I really love it as a sparring partner in terms of getting new ideas or getting unstuck. And so what I mean by this is I one of my biggest fears is that I'm looking at a problem only in one way or from one lens. And so I really love to use like ChatGPT and Claude to challenge my thinking and tell me what's wrong with this thinking. Provide all the counter arguments or what is it that I could be missing? And even taking it and saying, hey, let's debate this topic. Sometimes it's really, really hard to find people to give you critical feedback. And so having it be more critical of yourself or your idea has been really, really helpful for me.
amazing. I know that I'm actually a really good uh, a critiquer of work. However, sometimes people don't like it when I critique their work. So then one of the nice things is that it's a really non-confrontational way. You know it's an AI, so you're not gonna get too mad when they say, well, and they're so nice about it too. That's why I use
Yeah.
it to help me write letters to my boss because then I know that it's gonna clean up like anything that I could have said that was controversial. And I love that idea about having it challenge you. That's really brilliant, Sadie. Thank you so much for sharing that. So
I
besides,
definitely
I
use
didn't.
it to clean up my mean emails though, where I'm like, "Okay, this is a spicy email," and I'm like, "Can you get the point across, but make me sound nice?" And it's so brilliant with that. So I think
So
it's
good
making us
for
all
that. I
a
yeah.
nicer person. It's making us a kinder world. I don't know. Somebody needs to do some research on that. Is it making all of us get along a lot better?
If they could only do that in real life, right? Like, if you could only turn
Yes,
on a
yes.
filter when you're in a meeting and you wanna say something spicy and the AI would just clean up your lips and have it you would probably do a lot better. Just like I think it's helping our emails, but maybe in real life, we could have a filter or something we turn on, and it's the Sweet Ray filter, and he's gonna be non-controversial, but still get the point across. That's what's
Oh, you
beautiful
gotta
about it,
trademark
that
that.
even though
The Sweet
yeah,
Ray.
that's it. That's it. So anything else that besides a book, anything else that you're working on these days?
Oh yeah, lots of things. So really excited with HMCI. One of the big things that we're working on is building out an AI and robotics ecosystem. So uh, back in 2017, I got really passionate about economic development. I grew up in a
Right?
really small town where, you know, because of technology changes and really just like the industrial revolutions, right? So it hasn't been just technology that's been changing work, but all of the industrial revolutions that have happened, my small town started to really diminish. And we see people leave small towns and move to larger towns because that's where the jobs are. And I think there's a lot of culture that gets lost when this happens. And so I'm really interested in how do we understand economic development, but how do we preserve it and how do we infuse technology into that? And one of the ways that drives a lot of economic development is AI and robotics. And so we're working on building out a whole ecosystem that we can take and use that as a scalable model to bring to other cities so that they can have their own ecosystem of economic development for AI and robotics. And I'm really excited about this because I was inspired to create ecosystems when I went to Ecuador last year and got to tour one of the cloud forests and learn how, real biological ecosystems work, and it's such a beautiful process. The biodiversity that you need for ecosystems to survive and thrive is so inspiring to me because, I love creating environments where diversity can thrive. And to build really, truly sustainable ecosystems, we need that diversity. And so now I'm excited to take all I've learned and build a really diverse and strong ecosystem, but in a technology area that I'm so passionate about, which is AI and robotics.
I'm super excited about that. Wow, that I did live in Ecuador actually for about
Oh, no way.
3.5 years. That's actually, where I went to grade school, and that's actually where I learned English in Ecuador, in Quito, when I went to, so I was there for 7 years, 3.5 years in Quito. I don't know what part of Ecuador you were in, but
Well, I flew into
I know
Quito, but
I know of the place that you're talking about, and it's really amazing. I've seen it, so wow, that's really inspiring. So thank you for sharing so much, and again, thank you for the time. And please make sure that you give me some links offline to make sure that I can add any links to anything else that you're working on. And I appreciate you coming on the show, and hopefully I'll
my
see you soon.
pleasure.
All right, take care.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.